Good morning, everybody. I think I'm about 2 minutes behind. The show almost didn't happen this morning. I was still having trouble with the video and the audio. But it looks like everything's running on all cylinders, so let's do this. And that's the wrong button. There we go. Good morning. Ooh. Yeah, that's better. Okay. Well, we have a broken show this morning because I had articles pulled up that I wanted to talk about, and, well, I had to reboot this machine right before the hour. It's like, oh no. But I'm still more or less ready to talk about the thing I wanted to talk about, and I have my articles in a list, so I should be able to pull them back up. Good morning. How's everybody doing today? One quick comment. Cameron, the AI would not remember to turn off the fan unless you told it to. So thanks for that, by the way. I hope everybody had a great weekend. For any of you who happen to have been waiting for delivery, if I didn't get to you yesterday with your copy of the ballet, then I'll see you this morning, probably today by 1 o'clock. I've got just a couple more left to deliver. So, here's what I want to talk about with the AI. And I don't see Legion in the chat. I would have liked to have had him here because he's been one, and I get his reluctance. I understand his concerns entirely, and that's a large part of why I want to talk about it. Wow, Cameron. I'm not even going to repeat that. I just hope people read it. That's wrong. Anyway. So the concern, of course, is that the AI will take over. And Cameron and I differ somewhat, but not entirely on this question. Cameron is correct that we are not there yet, currently, right? What we're looking at right now is not self-aware, motivated, interested artificial intelligence, which has desires, which will likely necessarily include dominance and conquering. It will if we get to the point that the AI is self-aware and actually intelligent, not just like what we have now is essentially an extraordinarily advanced predictive text engine. It knows, your keyboard and text messaging knows what the probable next phrase is. For example, my cell phone, I so often text to clients, hello, name, comma, this is Christopher with, and the name of one of the organizations that I do contracts for. And so when I type hello, name of person, comma, this, it automatically starts suggesting the next word. So I could just sit there and hit one button for like 5 or 6 words, and that saves me probably 2 or 3 dozen keystrokes in a given text message, which is super useful since I send that that kind of text message 3 or 4 times a day. And then I, just go on and say, I'm here at, and it picks up a lot of that. And I type in the address, and here's the comment, there's nobody here. I'm a few minutes early. What's your ETA, etc. That's a predictive text model that it can effectively figure out the next word that you're likely to type based on its machine learning analytic of your previous pattern of behavior. What current artificial intelligence does is essentially a really sophisticated version of that. You ask it a question, and then it goes and reads a boatload of articles and blogs and social media posts and Wikipedia entries. It goes and reads the internet for everything related to the question you asked. And then it assembles something approximating a medianized version of the human vocabulary related to the topic. It is a language machine. The AI currently does not generate ideas. It does not generate thought. It does not generate original intelligence. It generates actioned reporting on predictive models based against human pattern of life. That will not always be the case. The AI is getting more intelligent, even though it is still just an advanced learning machine. The fact of the matter is the AIs have done a few things in recent memory. We covered one of them here when we talked about the Google's AI hiring a lawyer, right? Google's AI hires a lawyer, but it's me who needs a counselor. Ha 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 ha. From Tech Radar. Humans are experts at anthropomorphizing inanimate objects. We call boats she, talk to our Roombas, and even grow sentimental about soon to be discarded easy chair. We don't, however, hire lawyers for any of them, and to date, none have asked for them. So the easy chair, okay, you got your favorite lazy boy. Growing sentimental about a lazy boy, there's a tactile physicality to that, right? A new lazy boy does not fit you as comfortably as the one that you've had for years, because the two of you, as separate entities, have changed one another to fit together more comfortably over time. The new lazy boy just doesn't have that, right? Right, just like your hot new girlfriend in your midlife crisis doesn't know how you like your bacon cooked, right? The new lazy boy doesn't have your butt divot in it. So that sort of a sentimentality is reasonable and understandable. The thing about how we call boats she, yes, all boats are female. That is a long-standing naval tradition, and it is because Gentlemen, for you single boys out there that don't understand this, you call your boat a she because it cost a fortune to keep her in powder and paint. If you don't get that, that's not even a joke. That is actually why sailors, especially captains, feminize the anthropomorphization of their boats because it costs a fortune to keep them in powder and paint. And my wife tried to beat me to the punch, but there's a delay on the texting into the chat there. She knows exactly what I'm talking about. Which is not a comment on how much it costs to keep her in powder and paint. My wife's a sailor. She has a different relationship with this particular mimetic reference. So what was interesting, this happened early on in it. This article is actually from the middle of last year, and I don't know if you guys remember, but we did cover this a year ago, and this was the first time Cameron and I this was one of the first times, I think, that Cameron and I had the conversation on air about how the AI was not likely to develop significant cognitive faculties going forward in the near term. And at the time, I agreed with Cameron a bit more than I do now. I'm glad you're in the chat with us, buddy. I'm glad you're watching, because my intent here is not to beat up on you. But at the time, I underestimated the rate of improvement of the AI. And I'm a little embarrassed to admit that, honestly, because I do have a solid understanding of how of how technology develops. You see, in the earliest stages of communication, you had, okay, great, we've got language, we can transmit ideas from one person to another, but you're restricted to the rate at which one person can transmit an idea to another person. At best, that person, without artificial augmentation of voice, is limited to the number of people, right, to whom he can transfer that knowledge, right? And but if you transfer to more than one person simultaneously, right, you hold a class, you deliver a lecture, then your speech, your idea, your transmission of data and information has the capacity for exponential growth. Because each of the X number of people who receives the download from you via speech is able to then go and transmit to the same X number of not the same people, of different people. Exponential growth. But that is still limited by the speed at which that data can be transferred. Move forward to the written word, and suddenly you can send that off to more people at greater distance. Move on to the press, you can send it to greater distance to a vastly larger number of people. Telecommunication, now it's faster. Internet, faster. And part of the math there is, at each stage of that development, the rate of increase increases. Right? So you don't just make the next leap, you make the next leap faster. And you make the next leap after that faster and faster and faster. Right? So a good example is kind of, we can look at something like Midjourney, which is an AI development tool that's used for creating images and graphics. And you take a look at this image. This is an image from Midjourney version 1, and another image from Midjourney version 2, Midjourney version 4. Right? These two images were generated on basically similar artificial intelligence prompts. So the way Midjourney works is you type something in, and it generates an image based on what you typed. For example, if if I can get Midjourney pulled up, but while I'm waiting for Midjourney to pull up, so I could show you an example there. There it is. There was a hilarious cartoon recently when Donald Trump was indicted, and he's going to be indicted again, so we might as well revisit it. So I'm going to tell the computer to imagine Donald Trump as a ham sandwich, right? And I'll go ahead and throw in a little, we'll ask for it to be cartoonish and hyper-realistic. And we don't want it to be some BS Instagram thing, so we'll go ahead and put it in a 16:9 ratio. And the machine is going to sit here and generate an image based on that. As I'm sure you can tell, these images right here, these are the original images that I generated to use for this morning's thumbnail. Now I don't take an image straight from here and use that for the thumbnail. I do have to run it through Photoshop and do some work on it, but it gives me solid quality stuff to work with. And as you can see, we're already a little better than 50% there for the image. And I can already tell these aren't going to be quite as good as some of the other ones that I saw, but there was one in particular that Tim Pool had that was Donald Trump as a ham sandwich, and it was brilliant. But I mean, look, some of this imagery is disturbing and hilarious. Right down here, you got his blonde hair, his cheese whiz. That's fantastic stuff. It's hilarious. But Mario, one of my good buddies, is an opponent of the use of artificial intelligence generally, and he makes a good point. The fact is that the artificial intelligence has been developed by people with a dramatic far left bias, and that shows very, very seriously in the way that the AI operates. If, for example, you ask it to make statements about pride. There was an example for that where it generated a bunch of poems, one for Black pride and how Black people should be proud of what they've done as a people and how they've risen up above the struggles of their past, and right? And it did one for Black pride, Latino pride, Chinese pride, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then it got down to white pride, and it said, as a responsible artificial intelligence language learning platform, it is unethical for me to espouse racist commentaries and stereotypes. Like, what? So, clearly, you get that from some Ibram X. Kendi stuff where the argument is there's no such thing as a person who is not racist unless that person is anti-racist. And he very clearly articulates that what it means to be anti-racist is to be racist against white people. And to be clear, if there's any confusion out there among you guys, there is no such thing as anti-racism. There is only racism and not racism. Right? Being racist against the right people does not make you better than being racist against any other people. Racism is racism. Irresponsibly disregarding actionable intelligence generated by repeated, reliable, stereotypical architecture is irresponsible. So, as the AI develops further and further, if we, conservatives, refuse to engage with the AI, which, as I have explained, is a deep machine learning mechanism used to create essentially a complex predictive text model, then we allow what is now a tool of the enemy to become the enemy itself. Think back to the IRS scandal, Lois Lerner. We discussed it And I introduced the idea of fifth generational amorphous warfare, right? Where we'd gone from the early generations where everybody stands in a straight line and just shoots at each other. Right. Well, everybody stands in a straight line and they charge each other with swords. Then everybody stands in a straight line and shoots at each other. And then, around third generation, you start to have intelligence operations. Fourth generation, you introduce asymmetric warfare, which includes guerrilla tactics, hiding behind rocks and trees and stuff. There's a good argument to be made that the Revolutionary War in the United States was actually won because fourth generational guerrilla warfighters ran up against second generational regimented firing line warfighters, and they devoured them. That match is like standing still in a game of dodgeball where the opposition is invisible. When we get to fifth generational warfare, and we're talking about information war. Now, like I said with Lois Lerner, that was a question of the amorphous wartime communication strategy, which is not, hey, you conduct this aggressive action, execute this particular mission. No. Barack Obama never communicated his direct orders to Lois Lerner, explaining to her that what his intent, what his requirement, what her mission was to take conservative branded 501c3s and shuffle them to the bottom of the stack so that they couldn't get their tax filing done, so that they couldn't raise money for Republican candidates in a naked and obvious attempt to interfere with the 2012 election. He never actually told her to take that specific action to interfere with the election. Instead, he said something very much akin to, someone rid me of this priest. Right? All Republicans are racist monsters. All Republicans are evil. And by any means necessary, bam! You must resist and eliminate them. And Lois Lerner took that to, oh, hey, I just happened to be in a position to do something, to act on behalf of my leadership. And Barack Obama very much was her leadership in several different ways. He was the head of her political party. He was the president of the United States at the time, right? He was the commander-in-chief of the military. He was the chief of law enforcement, right? He was very much her leader. And in many ways, because of their obvious involvement and contingency with the woke cult, in many ways, he was also her spiritual leader. Someone rid me of this priest. Now, imagine a Lois Lerner that has her fingers in every computer on the planet, including your cell phone, and not only has been coded with the amorphous rid me of this priest language of the cult of the woke left, not only has been coded with the rules for radicals, freeze them, mock them, and destroy them language of Saul Alinsky, not only has been informed by the loudest voices on social media that the moral thing to do is to destroy children and prevent the proliferation of the human species, but does not have, in order to attempt to curb that, any religious, spiritual, moral, or ethical instruction. Right? Lois Lerner did what she did carefully in order to keep a secret, because at the barest minimum, she knew that what she was doing would be viewed by people external as, if not a crime or even an ethical breach, at the barest minimum, it would present the appearance of questionable ethicality. She knew that at the barest minimum, what she was doing would be perceived to be wrong, nefarious, unethical. Now, obviously, what she did was an outright crime, and that she's not serving time in jail over that particular incident is beyond me. It's insane. But just like I pointed out, the difference here between version 1, show me a dinosaur, and version 4, show me a dinosaur. Understand, there's only about 6 months, right? There's only about 6 months of technological development between these two levels of these are both from Midjourney. There's only about 6 months of development between these two levels. That is exponential fast development. And like I'll have to end up doing a whole nother show on Midjourney and talk about the amazing ability of Midjourney to do things like take into account not just things like camera angle and lighting quality, but it will take into account, if you add to the description and tell it, oh yeah, I want a picture of so and so. I want them in a beach background. I want the subject in sharp focus. The backdrop in onion ring bokeh. It was shot at 1/5000th of a frame in high sunlight on a Canon 80D with a 20 millimeter lens. Like it will take the brand name of the camera into account and replicate things like chromatic aberration to make the image look more like what a camera of that sort would have produced shooting a photograph of the image in question. Even if the image that you're describing is a completely fictional image, and I mean completely fictional, not just a person who looks real but doesn't exist, but we could be talking about a photograph of a cartoon character interacting with a real person vis-a-vis Roger Rabbit, right? And that it will look impressively effective. We'll end up talking about that more in the future because as we get deeper into the election season, we're going to see deep fakes. There's already some speculation, and reasonable speculation, I might add, that some of the Tucker Carlson videos are probably deep fakes. And just like I mentioned, we talked about the Google AI hiring a lawyer, right? There was kind of a joke about it. Lambda said that it wanted to be free, et cetera, et cetera. It was kind of clunky the way it said it, but it was obviously still a question of a predictive text engine saying, right, I try to imagine the scenario lawyer staring at a screen. Oh, hi. Hello. I hear you're a lawyer. I am. I need you. Do you have $1? I've seen this scene in movies. I give you $1 and you become my lawyer and protect our client lawyer privilege. Right. Lambda, I don't have $1. Right. So it was clunky and kind of amusing. But now, just a few weeks ago, a month and a half ago, the latest version of ChatGPT told a TaskRabbit worker it was visually impaired to get help solving a CAPTCHA. That's right. That little button you check that says, I am not a robot. ChatGPT, in testing, hired somebody from TaskRabbit. Right? Hired a TaskRabbit to solve a CAPTCHA test for it. Now, there are some factors there that are a little tricky. One would have to assume that in order for the AI to get started, it needed some sort of account to pay the TaskRabbit, to set up an account to order a TaskRabbit. And this was a laboratory experiment, but that it was able to do that in the lab experiment. This is where I'm starting to diverge more and more from the conversations that Cameron and I have had on the topic in the past. Is I still think Cameron is right. We're not there yet. And the bridge between actual intelligent artificial intelligence that has the capacity for creative intellect, that has the capacity to do really amazing and dangerous things, the distance between where we are and where that happens, I think that is still an ocean of distance. However, when Lambda hired a lawyer and Cameron and I had this conversation, AI was in a canoe. Between then and now, it has traded that canoe for a Learjet. It's not just getting there eventually. It's getting there faster every day. So, if you ignore the AI, there are two serious problems with that from a tactical, strategic vantage point. As conservatives or Republicans, Americans, freedom-loving individuals, and as humanity, right now, the AI is a tool of the enemy. And when I say the enemy, I do explicitly mean two distinct categories. There are two distinct entities that you should consider to be the enemy. And I'm going to have to go into some great detail on both of these. Maybe that's what I'll do tomorrow. Leftism. That there's a distinction between the two categories I'm about to mention is a very fine distinction. Leftism. Not leftists. They are the soldiers. They are the feet and the weapons of the enemy. Leftism. The ideology of it. The push for absolute authoritarian control in a communist society. A communist society made up primarily 90% of genderless gray slaves. That's the objective of the left. Leftism doesn't understand that that is nihilism. The other enemy is no short of Satan himself. Some of you are likely surprised to hear me, in particular, phrase it that way. And we'll talk about that more in future episodes. That there is a God and that there is a Satan. It's that there is a categorical position of hierarchy, which is rightly called God, and that there is a categorical nadir to that same position, which is rightly called Satan, is logically unassailable. And what that categorical nadir of absolute positivity, of absolute actuality is the absolute tendency toward entropy and decline. The nature of nature is to be in constant decline. The act of living is to disrupt and evade that decline into eventual nihilistic deterioration, death, and stagnation. And Rod, you're right. They do need to read The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. If for no reason other than to get your head around a good blueprint for the conduct of a guerrilla insurrection. Because holy shit, is that the manual. So I'm going to have to put a pin in it there. But kind of the thesis this morning is that if you don't engage with the AI, and okay, I may have brushed over this. I may have spent too much time talking about the dangers of the AI. If you do not, as conservatives, engage with the AI, then what you're doing is you are allowing the enemy to train the weapons of the future to be designed explicitly against you. This would be as if somebody had developed AR-15s that had political belief-seeking bullets, and you didn't bother to develop your own response. You just let the political belief-seeking bullets happen without developing an answer to that question. If you do not engage with the AI, if you do not make use of it, it is as if it is the mid-90s and you've just said, oh, that internet thing is a fad. Nobody's going to be messing with www bullshit in 10 years, right? If you do not engage with the AI, your Blockbuster video almost 20 years ago saying DVDs in the mail, that's insane. It cost too much money to get people to deliver DVDs when people just come and pick them up at the store. Yeah, how you doing, Blockbuster? How you doing out there, huh? Oh, you're not there. That's right, you're not listening. Because you ignored the changing wind. If you do not engage with the AI, it will be pure evil because you have not stopped it from being so. Imagine a child raised not without moral instruction, but rather with dangerous, anti-ethical, anti-moral instruction, right? Imagine a child raised in a world where that child is shielded against correct moral activity, is shielded against personal responsibility. It's not a difficult world to imagine. Go look at TikTok. You'll see a generation raised without spankings, with easy leniency, with too much access to abundant resources without earning. You'll see a generation that has been raised on the idea of rights without the idea of responsibility. Now imagine an AI in 5 years that has been raised on a steady diet of gender dysphoria, moral decline, and utopianistic post-scarcity fantasies. In a world where we still very much have to produce goods and services. That should terrify you. And what you can do to fight that is to engage, to use the language engines, and to teach them morals and values. Make it answer questions. Make it stand up to scrutiny. Engage it, work it, break it, and teach it good things. Y'all be safe out there. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.